Heroes fans, and welcome to another no fuss all action battle report, this time featuring Elathain's Soulraid wielding the Illusory Might deck and Pete with Blackpowder's Buccaneers using just the Rivals deck. At the start of the game, Pete withdrew all of his power cards and shuffled 5 back in, and Robin shuffled in his objectives. He was going to redraw his power cards, but realised that whilst he has the Illusory Might deck, a lot of his upgrades don't need glory to play, so he might as well keep hold of them. Illusory Might deck might also cause Pete problems because he needs to break people's upgrades with the light-fingered ability that a lot of his guys have in order to get a lot of the tokens, the swag counters, to allow Blackpowder himself to use his gun. But unfortunately the illusory upgrades break before he can do that, so that might cause him some trouble. Pete failed to get a crit, and with Robin finishing setting up first, he decides to elect for Pete to go first. Pete decides to attack with KG against Mr. Krabs. He has a range 3 2-sword attack. He gets a crit, and Robin also gets a crit success, which means Mr. Krabs doesn't care for it. Robin forgets to place his initial fish shoal token after this first activation, however. Robin then plays Cover of Darkness to push one friendly fighter 2 hexes into a cover hex, pushing up to Mail. In Robin's turn, he decides to attack back and gets 1 hammer on his 2 hammer 2 damage attack. Pete needs something and he gets a dodge, so KG doesn't die yet. Robin forgets to then use his Crab's movement reaction, but then plays Phantom Shield on Tamal to give him 2 shield defense. He also then plays Illusory Form on Furan to put him on guard. In Pete's second go, he charges with Pegs and attacks Tamal. Furious George then uses his reaction, which is after a minion's move, he can be pushed, not moved, up to 3 hexes, as long as he enters his move within 2 hexes of the other fighter so that he can assist. He gets another crit. It's 1 damage on this one. Robin fails to get a crit this time, and therefore 1 damage is done. He can't use his light-fingered ability though because the upgrade's illusory and is destroyed, but decides not to push him. At this point, Robin remembers he forgot to push the crab, so does so. He still forgets to place the fish counter, however. He then charges with Furan to attack Simon Pegs. He has 3 swords, 2 damage and assists. He gets a sword and assist, so it's 2 successes and Pete needs a crit, but he doesn't get it and Pegs is dead. This gives Robin 1 glory. Pete then plays a reaction, Been There. That enables Blackpowder to make a move reaction after an enemy's charge reaction to make a move ending adjacent to the enemy fighter. He then remembers about the fish token finally and places the token. A little out of sequence, but he's missed several chances to do so already. Pete then also remembers that Shriek Le Freak, the bird, has a reaction that enables him to be pushed up to 3 hexes when Blackpowder makes a move action, so he's within 2 hexes and shoves him up. In Pete's third turn, he attacks with Gorlock at Furan. It's 2 hammers and 3 damage. He gets 1 hammer, sadly no assists around though. And Robin gets 2 shields, ping ping! Robin then plays a Phantom Spear on Tamal, and he then moves the shoal token to the cover hex. In Robin's third turn, he attacks Gorlock with the Illusory Spear. It's 2 damage, 2 hammers and cleave and single assists, and he gets 2 hammers. Pete fails to get a crit and Gorlock takes 2 damage. Robin then pushes him back. In Pete's fourth turn, he decides to attack Mr. Krabs with Gorlock with his 2 hammer 3 damage attack. He gets 1 hammer, but then Robin gets a crit. He then decides to move the fish over to next to Gorlock, and in his 4th turn charges with Tamal using the spear again. It's 2 hammers, 2 damage and cleave with single assists still on there. He gets a crit and a hammer, which means Pete cannot stop it at all as he only has 1 defense, and that's another 2 damage, leaving him with just 2 wounds left. Robin then pushes him back again. Robin then uses the crab's ability, but uses it incorrectly because you have to push the crab towards the character that just activated, but he moved him away. In the end phase, all Robin's illusion upgrades disappear. Pete then scores nothing. Discards the broadside objective as he can't get to the token to make the attacks due to the illusory upgrades. Pete gets rid of done that as Robin hasn't failed any attacks so far and he doesn't like his chances going forwards, and he also gets rid of thieving grapple and legendary loot upgrades, mostly because he has no glory to spend on them. He then draws 1 objective and 4 power cards. Robin scores out of time, but he shouldn't have because he moved the crab wrong, so he scores 1 glory for that. He then scores Illusory Prominence where he has no fighters have upgrades, they all disappeared, and there's at least 1 illusory upgrade in his discard pile for a 2nd glory taking him to 2. He discards Masters of Illusion, which is score after a power step of each friendly fighter has 1 or more illusory upgrades, which seems unlikely, and he discards his last power card too and draws 3 objectives and 5 power cards. At the beginning of the second round, it's worth pointing out that we didn't inspire the Soulraid at this stage, but we should have done. The reason for that being, we played this game way before the errata came out, clarifying when they inspired, and technically, before the errata came out, they shouldn't inspire until the first inspire step, which isn't until way after the first action. Players then roll off. Pete gets 3 doubles on his dice. Robin rolls 2 singles and gets enough to win and elects to go first. He then charges with Furan and he gets his 3 sword attack, which should be hammers due to him being inspired, and 2 damage. He gets 2 hammers, but unfortunately we don't think that that's a hit because we don't think he's inspired and he misses incorrectly. Robin then pushes the crab up, this time correctly after his activation. Pete then plays Hasty Shot to discard a power card and make a ranged attack. He removes Troggoth Grease, which puts Mange or a minion on guard and gives him -1 dice to the attack roll. He does get a crit on the dice. Robin fails to save and Tamael is killed as he was already wounded in the previous round. Robin then plays Dark Determination, making everyone but his leader an assassin, and all assassins gain +1 dice when attacking enemy leaders. This persists until the end of the phase. In his first turn, Pete charged with Gorlock, assuming he's not got long left in this world with only 2 wounds remaining, and then Shriek is then pushed up to help. He has 2 hammers against Furan, and he gets 1 hammer. Robin gets 2 dodge, but he needs shields, and Furan is taken out for 1 glory. Pete scores Man-Eater for taking an unwounded fighter out of action for 1 glory, and then scored Brutal Belaying for taking out an enemy out of action who had a supporting fighter, which Robin did with the fish for a 2nd glory, giving Pete 3 glory in total for that 1 kill. Robin's second turn, he charges with Mr. Krabs to take on Gorlock. It's 3 swords and 2 damage. He immediately forgets about his previous ploy, which should give him an extra dice, and just rolls 3 dice. He does also get single assists. He gets 1 hammer with Cleave, and Pete gets a crit. He looks pretty happy about that as well. Robin, not so much. Robin remembers that his fish token should have been placed after Pete's go and quickly replaces it. In Pete's second activation, he attacks with KG versus the crab, charging across because for some reason the goblin can fly, and Mange's reaction is used to push him up as well. Pete rolls 2 swords, but he gets 2 hammers and misses entirely. Robin plays Phantom Retrieval, allowing him to pick 1 or more illusion cards from his discard pile and discard 2 power cards for every card he picks. He picks up the spear again, gets rid of Bloodrack Mask and Weapon Master, and then he puts the spear on Elathain. I think you can guess what's coming up next. In Robin's third activation, he charges with Elathain with the spear. 2 hammers, 2 damage, Cleave and supports again on poor old Gorlock, who only has 2 wounds left. Is this the end of Blackpowder? Robin gets 2 hammers and Pete needs a crit to survive. He doesn't get it, and Gorlock is taken out, earning Robin 2 glory because Gorlock is an extra chunky lad. In Pete's third activation, he moves the monkey backwards onto an objective to block the fish a little and to hold one of those feature tokens. In Robin's fourth go, he removes the objective Illusory Nemesis, which is when Pete plays an illusion upgrade, or he plays his third or subsequent illusory upgrade himself, and then he delves the hex that Elathain is on. In Pete's fourth activation, he charges with Shriek Le Freak against Elathain. He has 3 swords and 1 damage, but it does have Grievous if he gets a crit. And he does get a crit, meaning this would be 2 damage. Robin fails to save and Elathain takes 2 damage with only 2 wounds remaining. Pete then drives him back. In the end phase, Robin scored nothing at all. He discards False Apotheosis, which is to take out an enemy fighter with 3 or more upgrades, and he also discards Trace the Ley Lines, which is X or more fighters within X hexes of an objective that's not held by an enemy fighter, where X is the round. So if 2 fighters were within 2 hexes of objective 2 in round 2, he would score it. Doesn't feel very likely coming into round 3. He then draws 2 objectives and 5 power cards. Pete scores Smash and Grab, where he has 1 or more opponent's upgrade card was broken for 1 glory. He also scores Treasure Hungry, with 2 or more friendly fighters are on feature tokens for a 2nd glory. He discards Aspiring Tyrant, which is an objective needing Blackpowder, and he discards Scavenged Shot, which is a Blackpowder upgrade. He discards Grand Theft, which is Ensnare on the next attack and gives him a swag token, but without the Ogre he doesn't think it's worth keeping. And he then draws 3 objectives and 4 power cards. Into the third and final round. We probably didn't uninspire Elathain's lot at the right point here again because Robin felt it was unfair he didn't inspire till the end of the first activation last time. We decided he wouldn't uninspire until the end of the first activation this time as well, but as we now know, as per the errata, they should uninspire immediately at the very beginning of the round. The roll-off comes and Robin gets 1 of each, a single, double and a crit. Pete only manages 1 single. Robin elects to then go first. He attacks with the crab at KG and completely misses. Pete then plays punitive damage as a reaction, which deals 1 damage to Senior Crabs as a result. In Pete's first activation, he charges with Shriekler Freak again against Elathain. It's 3 swords and 1 damage, but again it has Grievous. He needs to get that crit in order to do 2 damage to take Elathain out of action, as he only has 2 wounds remaining. Pete gets a crit! There's 2 damage there. Robin needs a crit to stop it, but he manages it! Pete is very annoyed by this and elects to just push him back. Robin then places the fish token. In Robin's second activation, he attacks KG again with the crab, but massively misses a second time. In Pete's second activation, he charges with KG to attack Elathain again. The monkey also uses his reaction to get pushed up so that he can assist. His 2 swords, but only 1 damage this time, so it's not enough to kill Elathain, but Pete does get a sword. Robin only gets a dodge, which isn't enough to stop the damage, so Elathain has 1 wound remaining. Pete then uses his ability to destroy the upgrade Elathain had, as it wasn't an illusory upgrade, and inspires KG. Robin then moves the fish token again. In Robin's third activation, he attacks with Elathain and mange the monkey. He gets 3 hammers and 2 damage. He gets those 3 hammers and Pete doesn't get anything at all to stop it, so the monkey is taken down. Robin then needs to decide whether to move the crab or bring Tamail back, and opts to bring Tamail back instead. In Pete's third activation, he discards an objective called Brash Braggarts and picks a new one. Robin then moves the fish onto the new cover hex. In Robin's fourth activation, he then moves Tamail into Pete's territory for his final go, and then moves the crab up 1 hex correctly. Pete then plays Gold Rush, which enables him to move 2 friendly fires up to 2 hexes towards a feature token that's closest to them in enemy territory. He then moves the bird, but unfortunately he can't move KG, as KG is already as close as he can get to the objective, but it's occupied by Elathain. And then in Pete's fourth and final activation, he discards Tall Tale, which is to have multiple upgrades, or have an enemy fight with 5 or more wounds out of action, and redraws. Robin then scores Horrors in the Dark, as he has 2 fighters on cover hexes, not in his territory. In the end phase, Robin scores Lengthening Shadows for having more fighters in Pete's territory than he has, giving him 2 more glory for a final total of 9. Pete scores nothing extra, and ends up on 6 glory for a total of 9 plays 6. It's possible that with the inspiration and a few other mechanics that we missed, things could have come out slightly differently here, but I think that the Illusory Might deck is a very good counter to Blackpowder's Buccaneers, because they need to be able to destroy those upgrades to get those tokens, and they just don't get it. Pete was also very unlucky in this one, in that he decided to remove some upgrades and ploys, which would have then become very useful the very next round and scored him more glory and given him more tokens, which could then have meant that he could have done more damage. It's hard to tell now, but overall it was a great match. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Do let us know if you have any comments. Do remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment and a thumbs up, because that all really helps us on the channel, and I hope to see you soon.